Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. Gameweek 22 is done with an average of 44 points. How did you do? I got 31. And I used my wildcard just to end up in the same position I was in last week. It turns out when you're making bad decisions, you're just making bad decisions, whether you have a wildcard or not. It has been about 7 weeks, and I don't know when you start to confirm the free fall, but I am definitely in a free fall. So, what went wrong? What went wrong in Game Week 23? Well, it started off for me very early. Sunderland 1, West Ham 3. I thought West Ham would be taken advantage of, but it turns out Sunderland only really win at home and really are bad away from home. They're kind of like Newcastle a year or two ago. So, no clean sheet for Sunderland, and they scored through Bobby from Mukiele, and I had hoped for an Enzo Lefebvre type performance. Then you have Burnley versus Spurs. I mean, if you have Romero van de Ven, you did well. If not, not too well. And then let's see. Man City. Man City was where the biggest disappointment came, because if you didn't do well, more likely than not, you had Haaland as your captain. And for the first time since Haaland came, and he's not injured, he was rested. This puts the whole rest of the season in jeopardy, because we don't know now when Haaland will start, and him coming on to give you 2 points as a captain against, in quotes, an easy team Wolves is so disappointing. And now that he's no longer guaranteed to start, we have to really question whether he's a shoot-on captain. So that was definitely the worst thing that happened this week. Haaland not starting and then coming on and not doing anything. He just came on for 1 point. I'm just happy he didn't get a yellow card. Salah is back. He got an assist. That was about it, and it was a bit of a soft assist, but he got it anyway. Van Dijk was the main star in this game. He made mistakes and he scored. So Bournemouth won, and we don't know who the main Bournemouth player is yet. If you have a Vanilson, that's it. Many people have been thinking it would be Krupi Jr. It wasn't him. People were hoping for Igor Thiago, Kelleher, and maybe Vandenberg or Collins to do something. They do nothing, and they're beaten by Nottingham Forest. If you're still holding on to Crystal Palace players, I don't know what to tell you. Without Gay, they looked bad at the back. They were just making, like, Canvo was just making mistakes. In fact, he made one of the mistakes that led to Chelsea's goals. Then if you were believing in Newcastle, they got beaten by Aston Villa. And then if you're like me and you finally got rid of Rodgers, guess what? That's when he decides to score. I mean, to have 8 points. What the hell? And then if you were one of those people who are super confident in Arsenal, thinking that what Manchester United did last weekend was a fluke, boy, were you in for a surprise. No clean sheet and a loss. Arsenal concede 3 goals for the first time in I don't know how long. And they lose at home for the first time I don't know in how long. Wild. Everything went against what you would think is normal this game week. And then Everton and Leeds draw. And that's just why, you know? Especially if you're like me and you had 2 Everton defenders. Let me tell you, a disaster of a wildcard. But on the other hand, if you believed in Bowen and you got him, and you believed in Crescencio's 3 goals in a row, you did well. If you believed in Romero and Van de Ven, you probably got something. If you kept your faith in Harry Wilson, unlike me, you benefited. If you have Semenyo still, you did well. If you have Rhys James and Estevao, Watkins, Rodgers, Mbumo, you probably did well. The marquee game was Arsenal versus Manchester United, and 3-2 is the highest score. It was a great game. The greatest game between these two sides that I've seen in recent times. Honestly, at the first half, I thought it was going to be an Arsenal game. They just looked like the better team. They were snuffing things out. They didn't look like the team. They didn't look like Manchester City did last week. So I thought, oh, okay, yeah, there is a gap between Arsenal and Man City this season. and it is showing in this match. Little did I know how wrong I was. I had Timber, but I'd put him on my bench, and then when I sort of saw that it was him who scored, I was very bitter. But then when I saw it was given as an own goal to Martinez, that made me happy. And then Bruno scored off a mistake. There were so many goals that were created by mistakes this weekend. And you know, last week when I was saying the only way I thought Man City would score was a mistake, this is the same thing. At that point when Bruno scored, it only looked like it would be a mistake that would lead them to a goal. And it was. Zubimendi gave him a good through pass, and he did the business. And then Dorgu, who has just been a revelation under this new manager, Carrick, scored a really beautiful goal. And then Merino scored a goal-mouth scramble from a set piece. And then Cunha came with a very beautiful goal, undisputable goal. Arsenal hearts were broken, and that is all that it was. 3-2. Great game. Great entertainment. And there's this pattern of Mbeumo starting and then Cunha coming on that just makes sense. Dorgu picked up an injury, so if you think of bringing him on, I would say hold on. We don't know how severe it is. The pivot of Casemiro and Mainu is looking good. Fernandes and Mainu had the assists for Manchester United, and Odegaard had the assist, well, one of the assists for the Arsenal goal. When it comes to bonus points, Mbeumo and Cunha got 3. I'm telling you, when Cunha comes on, he comes on with another fire. It's like what Anthony thought he was doing when he was coming on. So Mbeumo and Cunha get 3 bonus points, and Merino gets 1. When it comes to disappointing match, I would say the Man City Wolves game is disappointing only because Haaland did not play. And worst part is that they won without him, which is just the worst part because it sends the wrong lesson. Pep is learning the wrong thing, and us fantasy managers are screwed, especially those of us who are dependent on Haaland. So maybe this is time to get him out of your team. It is really hard to choose a disappointing match because there's no real disappointment. Maybe if you're a Liverpool fan and you're hoping to challenge, I would say yes, that is the disappointing game. Bournemouth 3, Liverpool 2. Evan Nilsson and Jimenez scored early. Van Dijk was just looking like Kyle Walker. I don't know if you remember when Kyle Walker was at Man City last season and I was saying they just need to get rid of him. He was looking slow. He's looking like his decision making is gone. He's looking like a shell of himself. He's there, but he's probably not him anymore. Liverpool's best player at this point is Szoboslai. Anyway, Evan Nilsson and Jimenez score early, and then Van Dijk pulls one back. Szoboslai gets a good goal off a sort of free kick, and then in the 90-plus heartbreak minute, Adli scores with a very good finesse finish. And that's how it ends, 3-2. Liverpool lose. Honestly, at this point, it's looking like Szoboslai is the best Liverpool asset. Now that Salah is back, it makes you wonder what it means for Wirtz, because Wirtz looked different today compared to how he has looked before without Salah. Szoboslai had the assists, and Haaland Scott had the assists for Bournemouth. Like, now who's Hale? I said Bournemouth are just an interesting team. Szoboslai had the 3 bonus points, Evan Nilsson had 2, and Adli had 1. There were only 3 clean sheets this weekend. Martinez had a great game against Newcastle, and he was a top goalkeeper this weekend. 10 points. Donnarumma, 8 points. Sells, 6 points. Dubravka, 5. Sanchez, Pickford, Leno, and Pope all had 3 points. When it comes to defense, Matheus Nunes, Aina, and Romero had 11. Justin and Virgil van Dijk had 9 points. When it comes to midfield, Estevao and Szoboslai had 13 points. Buendia and Ayari had 11 points. Honestly, if you haven't seen Ayari's goal, please look at it. I think it's my favorite goal of the weekend. Adli, Wilson, Marmoush, and Mbeumo had 10 points. So midfield was king today. And also Wilson scored a very painful goal if you're a Brighton fan or if you just removed him from your team like I did. João Pedro and Bowen had 12 points. Barry, Igor Jesus had 9 points. Watkins and Evan Nilsson had 8 points. So if there's anything you're seeing, the highest points was 13 this game week, which was Estevao, who is not a highly selected player. And so it also means that this was not the greatest week to have used your wild card. And it was also not a week for the top performers. And just like the title for the last podcast said, the template is broken. And we just need to sort of think out of the box. As you have seen or heard, I am unable to do that currently. Or rather, I make good recommendations, but I don't follow them. So for those of you who follow them, well done. You're the real MVPs. Let's look at some stats. 7 million people captained Haaland. Some even triple captained him for 3 points. I'm laughing because at least, there was better people and worse people than yourselves. And misery loves company. So 7 million of us captained him. So don't worry. If you're a fellow Haaland captainer, we're many. Bowen has 14 blanks in 23 weeks. Yet he is the third highest forward in FPL. Make that make sense. And therefore, if you're one of those set and forget type managers, he would have been the best one to have. You just close your eyes. Harry Wilson has 3 blanks in the last 11 game weeks. And those 3 blanks are the game weeks I've had him. Liverpool are without a win in 2026, and they play Newcastle and Manchester City next. Captain Haaland was captained globally by 57% of the entire FPL community. Salah was second with 7.0. João Pedro 3.6, Thiago 3.1, Semenyo 3.0. When it comes to DEFCON points, Cook leads away with 18. Ampadu, Tonali, Sangare had 17. And in 5th position is Adli, Stark, and Yamuluk, who had 16 points, total actions. Arsenal have lost only 2 games under Mikel Arteta when they've scored at least twice. 3-2 versus Michael Carrick's Manchester United in December 2021, and 3-2 versus Michael Carrick's Manchester United in 2026. Michael Carrick is the only manager to face Mikel Arteta more than once and have an 100% win record against him. Manchester United are the first team to win back-to-back Premier League games, with both coming against sides starting the day in the top 2 positions, since Everton did it in February 2010. Bruno Fernandes is the first Manchester United player since Wayne Rooney to make 10+ assists in consecutive Premier League seasons, 10 in 24-25 and 10 in 25-26. Arsenal conceded 3 or more goals in a match for the first time since December 2023 when they did it versus Luton, ending a run of 121 matches across all competitions without conceding more than twice. Arsenal have conceded 2+ goals from outside the box in a Premier League game for only the second time at the Emirates. The first time was against Spurs in 2008 when it was 4-4, and versus Manchester United in the 2-3 game. Mbeumo is the first Manchester United player to score against Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool in a single season since Marcus Rashford did it in 22-23 and Robin van Persie did it in 2012-2013. Since joining the club in 2022, Newcastle have not won any of the 9 games in which Bruno Guimaraes did not feature. It's quite vital for them. Against Chelsea, it was the first time that Crystal Palace had conceded a penalty, received a red card, and shipped 3+ goals in a Premier League match. Estevao, with 18 years and 276 days, is the second youngest Chelsea player to score an assist in a Premier League game since Neil Shipley, 18 years 164, did it for Chelsea against Wimbledon in 1993. Aston Villa have scored 13 goals from outside the penalty area in the Premier League. It is the most by any side this season, and their most as a club since 2007. Igor Jesus has scored 8 away goals for Nottingham Forest this season. Only Haaland, who has scored 12, has netted more away from home than him. Liverpool have conceded a 90th minute winning goal for the 3rd time in the Premier League this season, the most ever in a single campaign. No player has scored more goals from outside the box for a Premier League club in all competitions this season than Dominic Szoboslai, which is 5. Phil Foden also have 5, so they're tied top. Mamouche has scored 8 goals in the Premier League, and all of them have been at the Etihad. Jared Bowen has now got the most goal contributions for West Ham in Premier League history. He's moved one clear of Mikel Antonio. The most selected player was Haaland, most captained was Haaland, most vice-captained was Thiago. The most brought-in player this week is Bruno Fernandes for 463,000, Bumo 378,000, João Pedro 303,000, Enzo 239,000, Dorgu 230,000. Most removed player, Foden 480,000, Bruno 294,000, Ekitike 184,000, Sheki 154,000, Voltemada 118,000. Szoboslai is this week's player of the week with 13 points. The most points this week belong to Mo with the Flow. They got 115 points and they used their bench boost. Henderson gave them 1 point. Konsa 6, Milenkovic 8, Virgil van Dijk 9, Rogers 8, Bruno 5, Szoboslai captain 26, Cunha 9, João Pedro 12, Watkins 8, Thiago 2, Semenyo 8, Walker 4, James 6, Sanchez 3, and that's how they got 115 points. In our group, tough week, the highest points was 67, and this was gotten by Nikola Misljanovic. They had Pope in goal with 3 points, Dorgu 8, Milenkovic 8, Tarkowski 4, Foden 1, Gordon 2, Semenyo 8, Neto 3, Captain Watkins 16, João Pedro 12, Thiago 2. It was a tough week for our group. Second was Clinton Oko, who got 66, GTO got 65, Chris Maseka got 64, and Dijan Rahman Dangol and Haidar Yassin got 63. I thought I had a rough week, but Ongwan Limo is having the roughest week of us all. Commander Amos got 15 points. The misery loves company. So, Raya in goal, 1 point. Kukureya, 4 points. Van Hecker, 1 point. Kirke, 0. Eze, 0. Okafor, 1. Foden, 1. Miley, 2. Thiago, 2. Voltemada, 1. Captain Haaland, 2. So unlike many other teams that end up bottom, this guy was actually trying. And that's somebody who used his wildcard and was trying and only got double that amount. I feel their pain. Tatiana Mislenovic got 22, Ayamide got 23, Marcos Peters got 24, and Murunga Manyara, along with Boaz Ogola, got 25, and that's the the bottom 5 of our table in terms of point acquisition this week. Melita Elvis is the man with the most points on the bench this week. They had a whopping 30 points. Wow. In goal, Dubravka 5 points. Anderson from Fulham 8 points. Cunha 9 points. Dorgu 8 points. Just those players equaled my team. 31 points is nothing, guys. So, second was Kojo Danso and Walal Somali, who got 24 points on their bench. Ken Kimani and Tomi Oladipo and Serchivini got 23 points on their bench. GTO, Gunning for Glory, the attacking force netted 5 goals across the board. Well done. That was the most this week by any of us. In terms of midfield, Haidar Yassin's midfield had 38 points this game week. Ibrahim Ali had 34 points from his defenders. And so that was a good return. More than my entire team. Mike Mbugwa made the most transfers this week. A whopping 9. Ashwin Lee, Terence Nigel Bonaji made 4 transfers. Kiggs, Randy Augusta, and Madman Bielsa. Loki, Edmund Gadumbi, Mistaken, Mark Mora, Ken Kimani, Joel Andebe, Stan Midea, Control Alt Dele, Serchi Vinny, Gerald Juma, Charles Asano, and Anthony Koila. all made 3 transfers. That's like 19 people. Well done, guys. I hope they prove to be useful. Ken Kimani had the best transfer outcome, gaining 14 points from the transfers he made. Alexander Mutune made a few changes and got 12 points. Luffy D 11, Randy Augusta 11, Moses Chege 11, Arnoldinho Arnold 11. Well done, guys. Good decisions. When it comes to disappointing transfer outcomes, honestly, I thought I'd be at the top here having used my wildcard, but it isn't me. It is Mike Mbogwa, 28 points worse off by making the moves they made. Michael Miner, negative 13, along with Edmund Gadumbi. Simnani Jua, negative 12 points. Khalid Muhammad and Sir Carlos Wenger, 11 points worse off. When it comes to the team with the highest team value, Suraj Baigane has a team value of 105.9. Well done to you, sir. Lowest team value belongs to Kumi Nesupu, 96.2. Highest change in team value belongs to Monster at Buhut, and it's a tie. They have all gained 0.8. This is Dijan and Monster Boot. When it comes to worst change in team value, yours truly. So I'm taking L's everywhere. My team value has dropped by 0.8, but that makes sense. I used my wildcard and I got some people out and they had gained value over time. Szoboslai was the differential player this week in our group, with only 1% of us choosing him and him returning the highest points. He got 13. Owned by 2% in second place was Estevao, who got 13 points as well. Bowen, owned by 6%, comes in third place with 12 points, owned by 6%. João Pedro, owned by 14% of us, got 12 points and he was the fourth best differential. The fifth best was Romero, who's owned also by 2% and returned 11 points. Nikola Misljanovic has increased his global rank this week, jumping 863 positions globally. Mike Wow has dropped 770,000 points globally this week. Streak of green arrows, Tagana Gatheru, 8th straight week. Well done to you. I really need to call you and just give me some pointers because I'm doing nothing. And guess what? Streak of red arrows, Nash Chege, 7th red arrow in a week after using my wildcard. Pain. Okay, in our league, Nikola Misljanovic has jumped 24 positions. Well done to you. Ayomide has dropped 21 positions in our league this week. When it comes to captain choices, 135 of us chose Haaland to be our captain. And that's why the highest in our league is 65. 11 of us chose Thiago. 8 of us chose Ekitike, all bad captains. 7 of us chose Saka. 5 of us chose Semenyo. Well done. 3 of us chose Salah. Another 3 chose Rice. Another 2 chose Voltemada. Another 2 chose Wood. Another 2 chose Gyökeres. Another 2 chose Bruno. Another 2 chose Palmer. Another 2 chose Foden. And then Hudson-Odoi, Pope, Grealish, Cherki, Gakpo, Raul, Wilson, João Pedro, Mbumo, Watkins, and Gabriel were chosen by one manager each. So, when it comes to our table, at the top we have a new number 1, Arnold Midunga, 1386 points. Number 2, Alan Mushangi, 1374 points. Number 3, Konsi Konsa, 1373 points. Papi Chulo, 1354 points. Charles Kadavilis, 1353. Madagani Kihoro, 1347. Number 7, Jeffrey Jeremy, 1337. Number 8, Franklin Asiema, 1323. Number 9, John Mongemi, 1321, tied with Kevin King Kev, 1321 points. So from number 1, 1386 to number 20, which is 1285, you can see that gap is shrinking. So there is a breakaway group that is forming, and people like me are not part of it. Keep going, guys. At the bottom of the table, we have Mark Mora with 554. Then we have Don Clinton with 742. Mike Mbogwa's team, 792. Murunga Manyara, 797. And Team Modera, rounding up the bottom 5, or rounding down, I don't know, 899. The most important thing to know about this coming game week is that there's Champions League football tonight, and I guess European football this week, which means that, as always, the weekend could be affected by today in terms of injuries and possibilities of players missing games. Now, having said that, the game week will kick off on Saturday. Game week 24 will be live with Brighton taking on Everton. Now, Brighton have won 2, drawn 2, and lost 1. The most recent one to that Harry Wilson beautiful goal. While Everton have lost 1, drawn 3, and won 1. So they're both in sort of similar form, even though Brighton's a bit better. Their head-to-head goes 2 wins for Everton, 1 win for Brighton, and 2 draws. In the last game, Ayari scored a beautiful shot. And therefore, from Brighton, he would be the first person I'm recommending. And then you have Mitoma and Welbeck. On the Everton side, I would say, you know how it is. You have to recommend a defender. So you go Tarkowski or Pickford, and then Barry, because he seems to have found his shooting boots. Leeds take on Arsenal, and as we all know, Arsenal lost their most recent game to Manchester United. Now, they will be playing midweek in Europe as well, so depending on how that goes, we may or may not have some players available. They have won 3 out of their last 5, lost 1, drawn 1. Leeds have drawn 2, won 2, lost 1. So they're both teams in good form. Arsenal will be favored, but they will be having more tired legs. Now, the head-to-head favors Arsenal heavily. And in their last encounter, Arsenal won that game 5-0. But that is not the same Leeds that Arsenal will be facing this time round. They have been a tougher side to beat, and they have figured out how to defend better. I don't know if that means anything when you're playing the best team in England, so we'll see what happens, but Arsenal are favored for this game. If you're taking Leeds players, you believe they will score Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Aronson, along with maybe Mecha or Okafor would be your best bets. On the Arsenal end, you're hoping for a clean sheet. Gabriel should be your number 1, and then Raya, and then you can choose either your Rice or Jesus or Trossard. Saka is too expensive for the nothing he's doing. Wolves take on Bournemouth. Now, Wolves have been good in recent times. They have won 2, drawn 2, and lost 1 to Manchester City, which was expected. Bournemouth have won 2, drawn 2, and lost 1. And the only loss came to Arsenal. And their most recent victory came against Liverpool. So they are in impressive form. Their most recent encounters favor Bournemouth heavily, with Bournemouth winning all 5 of their most recent encounters, putting them at an advantage in this encounter. If I'm choosing Wolves players, I would choose Mane, Bruno, and Gomez. If I'm choosing Bournemouth players, Evan Nilsson, Jimenez, and Scott or Senesi, one of those very simple names. Chelsea take on West Ham next. Chelsea have won 4 of their last 5 encounters, while West Ham have won 3 out of their 5 encounters and having won their last 3. So both teams are in good form. Now, when it comes to head-to-head, Chelsea have won 4 out of their last 5 encounters with West Ham. And that makes them favorites for this encounter. Now, it's hard for Chelsea to keep a clean sheet, but it might be worth having a defender, maybe a goalkeeper, or maybe Reece James or Kukureya, And then up front, Neto or Estevao. Actually, maybe Estevao and João Pedro. So maybe James Estevao, João Pedro. On the West Ham end, Crescencio Somerville has scored 3 goals in 3 games, and he would be the number 1 person I would recommend. After that, it would be Bowen and then Mateus Fernandes, those 3. Liverpool take on Newcastle in what will be the marquee game of the weekend. Tottenham play Man City, but the way Tottenham are, it's not a marquee game anymore. Both teams came off tough losses, with Liverpool losing to Bournemouth while Aston Villa beat Newcastle. Their recent form, Liverpool have 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss. Newcastle have 2 losses, 1 win and 2 draws. So Newcastle's form is on a decline. And also Newcastle's fixtures are getting tougher. Their recent head-to-head has 3 Liverpool wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. So Liverpool are favoured in this encounter. Both teams, however, will be playing in the Champions League, which is great for them in that they will both be as tired as each other. But also, they may lose players. So if you're considering bringing on players from those teams, delay it just a little bit until you know how the outcome goes of the games tonight. Assuming everything goes well, I would recommend Szoboslai and Gakpo from Liverpool. On the other end, maybe Wissa, Gordon, because I believe there will be goals in this encounter scored by both sides, so I don't think it's worth it having a defender or getting into defense. Moving on, we will see Aston Villa take on Brentford. Aston Villa have won 3 of their last games, drawn 1, lost 1. Brentford have lost their 2 most recent games and won their 3 other games. So 2 losses, 3 wins. Aston Villa were impressive when they beat Newcastle, and Brentford have been unimpressive against Forest and were very unlucky against Chelsea. So does this mean they're in bad form? This game will really tell us, because they haven't scored in the last 2 games, so captaining Thiago might not be the best option, especially as they're playing a title contender, not a favorite, but a contender. If you believe in Aston Villa and their defense, Emi Martinez is a good keeper to have, and then you can have Rodgers and Watkins, or Buendia and Watkins. I removed Rodgers and then he has 8. I'm done with him. On the other end, if you believe in Brentford, Thiago, Schade, and maybe Janelt would be good options. Manchester United take on Fulham. Now, in their last games, there have been 2 draws, 2 wins for Manchester United, 1 win for Fulham. So Fulham are not favourites for this encounter, and given Manchester United's recent form, they will be everybody's favourite for this game. Now, Dorgu, it's out, the news is out, he will be unavailable for this game. So I would say Mbeumo, Fernandes, and Ahmad, or maybe Bruno, Mbeumo, and Cunha, because you know that boy will either now start for Dorgu or come on with fire. On the other end, honestly, if you don't have Harry Wilson, I don't know what you're doing. If you believe in DEFCON points, you should go with Anderson. And then if you want a third player, I would say Raul Jimenez. Forest versus Crystal Palace. It's so amazing what has happened to Crystal Palace. They are doing nothing. They have lost 4 out of the last 5 games, and they drew the other one. At least Forest, on the other hand, have drawn 2, won 2, lost 1. So they are in better form. Crystal Palace are like me over the last 6 game weeks, free fall. Total free fall. And I know people want Glasner to be sacked, just like my fans are asking for me to be sacked. And so let's see if they're able to hang on. Both teams will also have Europe, and so they will be similarly fatigued. And also the same injury risk will be available for both of them. Should you, for whatever reason, want to get a Crystal Palace player, honestly, you cannot bank on the defense. If you saw how they gave away those goals against Chelsea, Guehi was their last line of defense. It feels like he was putting everything together. So they may figure things out. Munoz is back, so maybe that'll help them. And he, along with Mateta, Sarr, are their three best players. At least Munoz can possibly get some attacking returns, if not defensive. On the other end, honestly, it is Igor Jesus. If you believe in the defense, you can go Celso, Ola Aina, and Morgan Gibbs-White. Tottenham take on Manchester City, which will be the biggest game of Sunday. Now, Tottenham are not doing well. Thomas Frank is probably realizing now that he's in way over his head. The recent head-to-head favors... it actually favors Tottenham. Tottenham have won 3 out of their last 5 encounters and lost 2. And that just goes to show you that with Tottenham, anything can happen. Tottenham have horrible recent form. They've lost 3 out of their last 5 games. They drew 2-2 with Burnley and won 1 game. Man City have won 3 and lost 2. They're not both in great recent form, but I would still back Man City over Spurs. Now, both teams are playing in Europe, and therefore they will be similarly fatigued, and they will possibly have injuries, but we can't know in advance. But hoping everything stays well. Will Haaland play? Probably. But he's not 100% fixed like he used to be. So now that brings us an issue of captaincy. Will you captain Haaland? I don't know. Anyway, now the other problem is who will play in the defense. At this point, we only know Donnarumma. So I would say Donnarumma. And if you believe Nunes. And then going forward, maybe Semenyo. I think Semenyo will play because he scored unless he gets injured. On the other end, for Tottenham, honestly, their 3 best players are Pedro Porro, Romero, and Van de Ven. So those are the only 3 players I would recommend. Closing the weekend will be Sunderland versus Burnley, which will be on Monday. Burnley beat Sunderland last time out when they played their first time in the Premier League. But Sunderland is a much better team now. They're much more cohesive. And that changes everything. Now, in their most recent 5 games, Sunderland were beaten in 2, drawn 2, won 1. Burnley have drawn 3, won 1, lost 1. So, Burnley are in better form. Now, Sunderland play better at home. And if you look at their most recent fixtures, they win at home and they lose/draw away. So now that they're at home, it is likely that they will win this game. If you believe that to be true, I would say the players to recommend from Sunderland are Brobbey, Mukiele, and Enzo Lefebvre. If you are getting Burnley players, I would say Foster, Kyle Walker, and maybe Anthony would be your best bets from Burnley. When it comes to captain choices, Brighton versus Everton. There's no clear captain choice for me here. Leeds versus Arsenal. If you believe in Arsenal winning, then maybe you go with Jesus or Gabriel or Rice. If you believe in Leeds winning or scoring, at least you can go with Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Aronson. Wolves versus Bournemouth. I could see Evan Nilsson doing something in this fixture. Wolves, I can say Mane. Chelsea versus West Ham, João Pedro, Estevao, Reece James would be good captain choices. On the other end, Somerville and Bowen would be good captain choices. Liverpool versus Newcastle, both teams are in dire straits. I would say Liverpool, if you want to, I would say Salah. Newcastle, maybe Wissa, but also don't choose captains from this game. Aston Villa versus Brentford. For Aston Villa, Watkins, Buendia Rogers, and maybe Emi Martinez. Brentford, if you must, Thiago. Man United versus Fulham, Harry Wilson, Mbumo, Cunha, Bruno. Nottingham Forest versus Crystal Palace. I could see somebody choosing a defender, so maybe sells Olaina and possibly a striker like Igor Jesus. Manchester City versus Spurs. No clear straight captain, but you could go Mamouche, Haaland, or Semenyo. Sunderland versus Burnley. I would say Brobby or Lyle Foster. Number 1 in the world is a team called Heroes, managed by Abraham Asimita. He has 1529 points. And when I look at his team, it gives me cause for happiness because it is quite similar to mine. So, except in ways that matter. So he has Pickford, Gabriel, Mukiele, Tarkowski, Wilson, Rice, Rogers, Saka, Calvert Lewin, Haaland, Thiago, and on the bench he has Petrovic, Bruno Guimaraes, Van Hecke, and Senesi. This week he got 39 points, and he also had Captain Haaland. So even at the top, it wasn't great for the number 1 player in the world. Looking at the FPL FDR, Arsenal have Leeds, Sunderland, Brentford, Tottenham, and Chelsea. So it's going to be one that is increasing in difficulty. Well, I don't know about Tottenham, but increasing in difficulty. So adjust accordingly. Aston Villa have Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, Leeds, and Wolves. So this one feels like it is descending in difficulty. Bournemouth have Wolves, Aston Villa, Everton, West Ham, Sunderland. It's a mixed bag, and I could see them getting some change from here. So if you have the right attacking player, which could be Evan Nilsson, should he become more proficient, it could be good. Brentford have Aston Villa, Newcastle, Arsenal, Brighton, and Burnley. So their games are only getting more difficult up until Arsenal, and then they become less difficult. Is it time to move off Igor Thiago? Boom, boom, boom. Now, Brighton have Everton, Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Brentford, and Nottingham Forest. Honestly, a mixed bag. Burnley have Sunderland, West Ham, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Brentford. They could get something in at least the West Ham and the Crystal Palace game. Chelsea have West Ham, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, and then Arsenal. Interesting. Might be time to triple up on Chelsea, because these fixtures are kind to them, in theory. Crystal Palace have Forest, Brighton, Burnley, Wolves, and Manchester United. Honestly, they need to get their shit together. They're like me, they just need something to happen. They need something to change. I don't know what needs to change, but something has to change. Everton have Brighton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Man United, and Newcastle. Everton, the only thing about them is that you look at them in terms of clean sheets, and can they get a 0-0 or a 1-0? They can get them in at least 3 of these games. So it might not be bad to have a defender from them. Fulham have Man United, Everton, Man City, Sunderland, Tottenham. Honestly, a mixed bag. Fulham are capable of anything, but also they can be beaten in all of these games. Leeds have Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Man City. Goodness, these fixtures are difficult. Good luck to Leeds. I may be getting off of your players soon. Liverpool have Newcastle, Man City, Sunderland, Forest, and West Ham. These are 4 difficult games. Let's see how they navigate that. Man City have Tottenham, Liverpool, Fulham, Newcastle, and Leeds. Honestly, it's a mixed bag. And this season is quite interesting because I think Arsenal, should they win it, will be winning it because no other team can be consistent. Manchester United, speaking of consistent, look like a team that have turned the corner and are a new team. Carrick is better than Sir Alex Ferguson. The team, fan base, everybody's high on Manchester United. And they have Fulham, Tottenham, West Ham, Everton, Crystal Palace. They beat Man City and Arsenal in the last 2 games. They will be favourites for all of these coming encounters. And I would say triple up, bet the house, get your Mbumo, get your Bruno, get your Cunha. Ride this new manager bounce until the end. Newcastle have Liverpool, Brentford, Tottenham, Man City, and Everton. Newcastle are not in great form like we discussed recently, and these fixtures will not be straightforward for them. I would discourage you from getting into them and encourage you to get off their defenders. And if you must have one, have Thiago, because he seems to be the one who will score. Nottingham Forest have Crystal Palace, Leeds, Wolves, Liverpool, and Brighton. Honestly, it seems like differentials can be found in the Forest squad. So look at them properly and you might find somebody worth having. Spurs have Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Arsenal, and Fulham. Oh my goodness, stay away from Spurs players, please. Sunderland have Burnley. In fact, I'll go one further. I'll say in these next 4 fixtures, Thomas Frank will be sacked. Okay. Sunderland have Burnley, Arsenal, Liverpool, Fulham, Bournemouth. So 2 of these fixtures are extremely difficult for them, but they have 3 fixtures at home, and that puts them at an advantage. West Ham have Chelsea, Burnley, Man United, Bournemouth, and Liverpool. Tricky fixtures. They're in good form. Anything can happen. Watch them closely. Wolves have Bournemouth, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, and Aston Villa. Not straightforward fixtures, but they could get a draw or 2 over here. I just want them to get over 11 points. I don't want them to equal or be less than what Derby did. So go Wolves, even though I don't believe in you. And with that, we have come to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoy the Champions League football this week, and we'll see you next week. The game week starts on Saturday and ends on Monday. Bye.